My family betrayed me for my sister. Now the truth is out. On a Friday afternoon, my sister texted me a new door code to our family cabin, a cabin I'd helped maintain for years. I thought she was being organized. Then my dad called and said, "Don't come up this weekend, your sister needs space." I didn't argue. I stayed quiet, called a lawyer and started saving receipts. My name is Evan, I'm 32, and I'm from Michigan. If you grew up around the lakes here, you know the culture. Cabins aren't just buildings, they're family stories. Ours was a small wood cabin near a quiet lake, nothing fancy. It had old photos on the wall, mismatched chairs, and a porch that always needed paint. My parents bought it when I was a kid, and it was the one place we all showed up, even when we weren't speaking much at home. My older sister Kelsey is 35. Kelsey was always the loud one, the one who decided what family meant, and somehow the rest of us adjusted around her opinions like gravity. I'm the opposite. I'm the one who keeps things running quietly. When the dock boards needed replacing, I replaced them. When the water heater failed, I drove up at 6 a.m. and handled it. When Kelsey wanted a perfect weekend, I made sure the cabin didn't fall apart before she arrived. I used to think that made me a good son. Later, I realized it made me convenient. This all started with a text. On a Friday afternoon in early summer, Kelsey texted me. "New lock on the cabin, new code, 4419, don't share it." I stared at the message. New lock. That was new. I replied, "Why new lock?" She answered, "Security." "It's fine. Don't overthink it." Overthink. That's what my family calls it when you notice a change you weren't consulted on. Brooke, my wife, saw my face and asked, "What's going on?" I showed her the text. Brooke frowned. "Why would your sister change the cabin lock?" I shrugged. "She's probably being controlling again." Brooke said, "Controlling is one thing. Changing locks is another." That night, I got a call from my dad. He didn't say hi. He said, "Don't go up this weekend." I blinked. "Why?" Dad hesitated. "Kelsey needs space." Space. At our family cabin. I kept my voice calm. "Dad, I was planning to take the kids fishing. We have 2 kids. Noah is 7, Ella is 5. They love that cabin like it's a second home." Dad cleared his throat. "Just skip this weekend. It's not a big deal." I asked, "Did Kelsey ask you to tell me that?" Dad said, "She's stressed. Don't make this worse. If you were me, would you push right there?" Because the truth is, I wanted to, but I could already hear the script. If I pushed, I'd be starting drama. If I stayed calm, I'd be mature. So I said, "Okay." We didn't go. And that was my mistake. Because the moment you comply with an unreasonable request, you teach people they can make more. The next week, Kelsey posted photos online. Sunset, dock, wine glasses on the porch. Caption, "Finally, my peaceful place." My mom commented hearts. My aunt commented, "So proud." I stared at that caption, "My peaceful place," and felt something tighten in my chest. My place had never been mine in our family. It was always ours until Kelsey wanted it. Then it became hers. 2 days later, my mom called me. She sounded bright, like she was trying to paint over something. "Evan, you should come for brunch Sunday," she said. "We need to talk about cabin paperwork." Paperwork. That was the first time I'd ever heard those 2 words together. I asked, "What paperwork?" My mom laughed lightly. "Boring stuff. Insurance. Updates. It's normal. Just come." Normal. That word is dangerous in families like mine. Normal means don't ask questions. Brooke looked at me and said quietly, "Do not sign anything you haven't read." I nodded. Sunday brunch was at my parents' house. Kelsey was there, dressed like she was hosting. She poured coffee, she served pastries, she acted like she owned the table. My dad sat quietly with his newspaper, pretending not to notice tension. My mom brought out a folder and placed it on the table. "Just a few forms," she said. "We're updating things." I asked calm, "Updating what?" Kelsey smiled and said, "It's just so the cabin is protected. You know, in case something happens." Something happens. I didn't like that phrasing. My mom slid a page toward me with sticky notes marking signature spots. "Just initial here and sign here," she said. "It's a standard update." I picked up the page. The top was covered by the folder edge, and the text was small. "If you were me, would you trust your parents and sign?" That's what my family expected. Instead, I lifted the folder and read the header. Quitclaim deed. My stomach dropped. I looked up. "Why is there a deed at brunch?" My mom's smile tightened. It's not what you think. Kelsey leaned back and said, It's a formality. I asked, a formality that changes ownership. My dad finally looked up. Evan, don't do this. I stared at him. Don't do what? Read. Kelsey scoffed. Oh my God, you're being dramatic. I looked at my mom. I'm not signing this. My mom's voice went sharp. Evan, you don't understand. This is for taxes. It's for clarity. I said, calm. Then send it to me. I'll review it with an attorney. Kelsey's eyes flashed. An attorney? Seriously? My dad stood up, chair scraping. If you bring lawyers into this, you'll ruin the family. I asked, why would a clean document fear review? Silence. Kelsey smiled coldly. Because you're not needed here. That sentence hit me harder than I expected. Not needed. At my own family table. I stood up and said, calm. I'm leaving. My mom reached for my arm. Evan, don't be like this. I looked at her. Don't hand me a deed and call it brunch. I left. In my car, Brooke called and asked, did you sign anything? No, I said. Brooke exhaled. Good. That night, I opened a folder on my phone. Receipts. I saved a note with the date and time, and I wrote one line. They tried to get me to sign a quitclaim deed at brunch. Because I knew what was next. They were going to do it without me, or they were going to try to trick me again. And 2 days later, I got a notification from a county email list I didn't even remember subscribing to. Document recorded, property transfer. I clicked. And my stomach went cold. The cabin's parcel number was listed. A deed had been recorded. I printed the county record at work because I didn't trust my own eyes. There's something about paper that makes denial harder. The document listed the cabin's legal description, parcel number, and a recording date from yesterday. And there it was. Kelsey Miller, grantee. And under grantors, my name. I called the county recorder's office. The clerk sounded tired, like she'd heard 100 versions of the same story. Hi, I said, calm. I'm listed as a grantor on a deed recorded yesterday. I did not sign it. She paused. You'll need to file a dispute and speak with an attorney. I asked, can you tell me the notary name? She read it. Notary, Hales. I wrote it down. Then I called my dad. He answered quickly, like he'd been waiting. I said, calm. The deed was recorded. Des Sihil. Okay. I blinked. You sound not surprised. Dad said. It's done. Don't make it worse. I asked, did you sign my name? Dad snapped, don't accuse me. I said, then explain why my name is on a deed I refuse to sign. Silence. Then he said, Kelsey needed stability. She's building something. Building something. With my name. I hung up. Then I called my mom. She answered with a fake laugh. Honey, don't panic. I said, the deed is recorded. My name is on it. My mom whispered, we thought you'd calm down. Calm down. Like refusing to sign away your rights is hysteria. I asked, how did you get my signature? My mom said, Evan, you're misunderstanding. I replied, calm, no, I'm reading. Then she said the sentence that made me realize this was coordinated. Talk to Kelsey, she said. She handled it. Handled it. My sister handled a property transfer. I texted Kelsey one sentence. Why is my name on the recorded deed? Kelsey replied 5 minutes later. It's not your cabin. You barely come up anymore. I stared at the screen. So that was the new story. I wasn't present enough to deserve it. I replied, I refused to sign. How did it get recorded? Kelsey wrote, stop acting like a victim. Mom and Dad agreed. That's enough. I saved it. Receipts. Then I called an attorney. Miss Bennett listened and said, do not speak to them on the phone anymore. Everything in writing. We request the original notarized deed and the notary log. Notary log. That phrase became the center of my life. Miss Bennett explained it simply. Notaries keep a journal. Dates, IDs, signatures. If I didn't sign in person, the notary log might prove it. Or, if someone misrepresented things, the log might expose it. I asked, what do we do right now? Miss Bennett said, we file a lis pendens, a notice of dispute, and we send a demand letter. Also, do not go to the cabin alone. They may try to claim you trespassed. Trespassed. On a cabin I helped maintain for years. That weekend, Kelsey sent another text. For your information, we changed the code again. Don't show up. I stared at it. If you were me, would you drive up anyway just to prove you can? I wanted to. But Miss Bennet was right. A trap is a trap, even if you're right. So I didn't go. Instead, I asked my cousin Mariah, who lived nearby, to drive past the cabin and take a photo of the new lock. Mariah agreed. She sent a picture. A brand new smart lock. And a sign on the door. Private property, no trespassing. My throat tightened. Not because a sign has power. Because it was a message. You're out. Then the smear campaign began. My aunt messaged me. Why are you trying to take the cabin from Kelsey? She says you're threatening her. Threatening her. I hadn't even spoken to her on the phone. I replied to my aunt, calm. I'm not threatening anyone. My name was placed on a deed without my consent. It's in dispute. My aunt responded, Kelsey said you're unstable. Unstable. There it was. The character story. If you're thinking, how do you fight that? You don't fight it with feelings. You fight it with records. Miss Bennet sent the demand letter. It requested a copy of the original deed, the notary journal entry, any ID copies used at notarization, confirmation that the property would not be sold, rented, or altered until dispute resolution. Rick's attorney, Mr. Doyle, replied fast, formal tone. Our client denies wrongdoing. Your client is mistaken. The transfer was consensual. Consensual. That word made my hands shake, because I had texts showing I refused. But I didn't send all my evidence yet. Miss Bennet said, we don't show our whole hand. We ask for what exposes them. Then, 3 days later, the notary's office responded. Not a friendly response. A short one. There is a journal entry, the signer appeared. Appeared. I stared at that phrase, because it meant someone appeared as me, or the notary was claiming I did. Miss Bennet asked one question. Do you have proof of where you were that day? I checked. I was at work, on camera, badge logs, meeting schedule. We pulled my work badge entry records. We pulled an email I sent at 10:03 a.m. from my office. The notarization time was 10:15 a.m. Different cities. No overlap. That was our anchor. Then Miss Bennet said, we'll subpoena the notary journal and the ID record. If the ID was copied, we'll see what was used. If you were me, this is where you might start feeling revenge. I didn't. I felt tired. Because my family had always been willing to sacrifice me for Kelsey's comfort, but I didn't think they'd do it on paper. The next escalation came from Kelsey. She listed the cabin online as a lake retreat. Not under Airbnb with branding, but under a local rental site. Mariah sent me the screenshot. Weekend getaway. Newly updated lock. Sleeps 10. Family owned. Family owned. I stared at those words and felt something steady. They were using the cabin as a business now. That's why they wanted control. So I asked Miss Bennet, can we stop the rental? Miss Bennet said, yes. We request an injunction. We filed. The court scheduled a hearing. And the night before the hearing, my mom texted me. We can fix this. Just drop it and we'll include you again. Include me again. Like I was being offered a seat at a table I built. I replied, calm. No, we fix it by telling the truth. My mom didn't respond. Kelsey did. Kelsey texted, you'll lose. Mom and Dad are on my side. And that was the most honest thing she'd said. Because my whole childhood had been that sentence. Mom and Dad are on my side. The judge's question about the original deed was not dramatic, but it mattered. Because copies are easy. Originals are harder to lie about. The judge issued a temporary order. No selling, no renting, no transferring, no new locks. The cabin status was frozen until the dispute was resolved. Kelsey was furious. She didn't text me about the order. She texted me about her embarrassment. You humiliated me, she wrote. I saved it. Miss Bennet told me to stop engaging with anyone except through counsel. So, I did. Then we focused on the notary journal. We subpoenaed it. A week later, Miss Bennet called me and said, we got the entry. I sat down. She said, the journal shows someone signed as you. My stomach tightened. Then she added, the ID listed is not your driver's license number. I exhaled slowly, because that meant someone either used the wrong ID or the notary wrote it wrong, or someone presented an ID that wasn't mine. We requested the attached ID copy. And when it arrived, my hands went cold. It was a photo ID. Not mine. It was Dylan's friend from high school, a guy named Jared. I recognized him because he'd been at my parents' house 100 times. The notary log listed Jared's ID number, but the signature line said Evan Miller. So Jared had appeared, and someone had signed my name. Or the notary had allowed someone else to sign for me. Either way, it was a disaster for their story. Miss Bennett said, "This changes everything." I asked, "How?" She said, "It's not a misunderstanding. It's a documented mismatch." We prepared for the next hearing. Then, my mom called me from a blocked number. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail. "Evan, please. Kelsey is falling apart. You've made your point. Come home. Come home." I hadn't lived at home in over a decade. It was emotional language to pull me into an emotional decision. I didn't respond. Instead, I sent the voicemail to Miss Bennett. Miss Bennett replied, "Good, keep it." Then we did something that felt strange. We contacted Jared. Not to threaten, to ask questions. Jared didn't respond at first. Then he texted, "I don't want drama." Miss Bennett replied, "We are seeking clarity. Your ID appears in a notary journal entry connected to a property dispute. You may need your own counsel." Jared called me that night. His voice was shaking. "I didn't sign anything," he said. I kept my tone calm. "Your ID is in the notary journal." Jared sounded panicked. Dylan asked me to come with him to a notary. He said it was for a job application. I handed my ID, then I left. I closed my eyes. Because it wasn't just Kelsey. It was Dylan too. It had become a team effort. Jared said, "I swear I didn't know. I didn't sign anything." I said, "Okay, then you can help by giving a statement." Jared agreed. We got a written statement from Jared stating, Dylan asked him to come to a notary. Jared provided ID briefly. Jared did not sign property documents. Jared was not aware his ID would be used in a journal entry connected to a deed. That statement was another nail. If you're listening and thinking, "So they used a friend to muddy the record," yes. They tried to create confusion. But confusion collapses when people speak in writing. Then, another thing happened. Mariah, my cousin, sent me a message. "I was at your parents' brunch that day," she wrote. "I saw the folder. I heard you refused to sign. I'll testify." I stared at her text. Because Mariah had always stayed neutral. Neutral is how families survive conflict. Now she was choosing truth. And that mattered. The next hearing was tense. Kelsey's attorney argued that the ID mismatch was a clerical error. Miss Bennett responded calmly. "A clerical error does not explain why an unrelated person's ID is logged for my client's signature." The judge asked, "Where is the notary?" The notary appeared by video. Mr. Hales looked nervous. Miss Bennett asked simple questions. "Did Evan Miller appear in person?" Mr. Hales hesitated. "I believe so." Miss Bennett asked, "What identification did he present?" Mr. Hales looked at his journal. "A state ID." Miss Bennett said, "Whose ID number is recorded?" Mr. Hales read it out loud. "Jared's." The judge frowned. Miss Bennett asked, "Is Jared Evan?" Mr. Hales swallowed. "No." Then Miss Bennett asked the question that ended his credibility. "Did you personally verify the person signing was Evan Miller?" Mr. Hales hesitated too long. Then he said quietly, "Dylan told me it was Evan." Dylan told him. The judge's face tightened. Because notaries are not supposed to take someone's word for identity, the judge asked, "So you relied on Dylan's statement, not on verifying the signer?" Mr. Hales didn't answer cleanly. And that was enough. The judge ruled that the deed transfer was invalid and would be reversed, pending final documentation. Kelsey's face went pale. Rick's face in the back row turned red. My mom stared at the floor. Outside the courtroom, Kelsey approached me. She didn't cry. She didn't apologize. She said, cold, "You ruined my plan." Plan. She finally said it out loud. I looked at her and said, calm. "You ruined your own plan when you used my name." Kelsey snapped. "The cabin is wasted on you." I replied, "The cabin is not a business to me. It's a family place. You made it a business." Kelsey laughed bitterly. "Family. You always act like you're the victim." I didn't answer. Because I knew the truth was going to spread on its own now. The record was public. The judge's order was real. And my family's favorite weapon, denial, was running out of room. That week, relatives who had been cold started texting. I didn't know it was like that. "I'm sorry I believed Kelsey. I thought you were being dramatic." I replied politely, short. "I understand why it looked that way. I'm protecting my name." My mom asked to meet. I agreed, but not at her house. At a dinner. My mom sat across from me, eyes swollen, and said, "Rick is furious." I nodded. He should be. My mom whispered, "He says you'll never be welcome again." I stared at her. Welcome where? The cabin he tried to take from me. My mom flinched. Then she said, quietly, "I didn't know they would do that." I looked at her. "Mom," I said, calm, "you watched me refuse to sign. Then you watched the deed get recorded anyway. You didn't ask questions. You didn't call me. You went along." My mom started crying. "I didn't want to lose Rick," she whispered. And there it was. She chose Rick over me again because she was afraid. I didn't yell. I said, "That fear cost you my trust." My mom nodded, crying. "I know." Then she asked, "Can we fix it?" I answered honestly, "Maybe." But not quickly. Once the deed reversal was filed, the county record updated. And in a small town near a lake, county records might as well be gossip. Suddenly, people knew. Not just my family. Neighbors. Friends of friends. Kelsey hated that. Because Kelsey's whole life was built on image. She posted online, "Some people can't stand seeing a woman succeed." No names, but obvious. Then she messaged relatives privately, saying I was attacking her and trying to control my mom. I didn't respond. I did what Miss Bennett told me. Stay boring. Because boring wins in court, and boring wins against manipulation. Then Rick escalated. He sent me an email with a subject line that made my stomach drop. Reimbursement. Attached was a list of expenses for the cabin. Taxes. Improvements. Labor. Lock installation. Lost rental income. Lost rental income. My name was on the invoice like I was a tenant. Miss Bennett laughed once when she saw it. Not amused, just disbelief. She said, "This is intimidation." We responded with one line. "Do not contact Evan. Any claims must be filed formally, not by email intimidation." Then we saved Rick's email. Receipts. Because now we had a full picture of the motive. They tried to take the cabin. They planned to rent it. They got stopped. Now they wanted money anyway. If you're listening and thinking, so it was always about business, yes. And the proof was in their own words. Then Thanksgiving arrived. My family hosts Thanksgiving at the cabin every year. Or they used to. This year, the cabin was in dispute, so my mom tried to host at her house. She invited everyone, including me, but she added a line. "Let's keep it peaceful." Peaceful means silence. I asked Miss Bennett, should I go? She said, "Only if you want, and only if you can stay calm." Brooke and I decided to go for one reason. Because absence would be used as evidence that I was the problem. So we showed up. We arrived with a pie and polite smiles. Kelsey was already there, acting like she was the hostess. Dylan leaned against the counter, arms crossed. Rick sat in his chair like he was holding court. My mom looked nervous. Dinner started normal. Then Rick raised a glass. "I just want to say," he began, "family is about loyalty." Brooke squeezed my hand under the table. Rick continued, "And lately some people have forgotten that." He looked at me. Kelsey smiled slightly. This was their plan. Turn Thanksgiving into a moral stage. If you were me, would you argue? I didn't. I stood up calmly and said, "I'm going to keep this simple." The room went quiet. I pulled out a folder. Not huge. Not dramatic. Just 3 pages. Page 1, county record showing the deed was recorded with my name. Page 2, the notary journal excerpt with Jared's ID. Page 3, the judge's order reversing the transfer. I placed them on the table. "I did not start this," I said calmly. "I refused to sign. It was recorded anyway. The notary log shows my identity wasn't verified properly. The judge reversed it." Kelsey snapped. "You're ruining dinner." I said, "No, I'm stopping the lie." Rick stood up, angry. "You're embarrassing your mother." I looked at my mom. She signed an affidavit against me. My mom flinched. Kelsey's face went tight. Dylan muttered, "Here we go." I looked at Dylan and said, "You brought Jared to the notary." Dylan's head snapped up. "Prove it." I slid Jared's statement across the table. Dylan went pale. Not because the statement was loud, because it was written. Kelsey stood up. "This is insane." I asked one question, calm. Kelsey, why did you change the lock before any of this? Kelsey hesitated. Then she said the truth without meaning to. Because you would have shown up, she snapped. And you would have ruined my rental plan. Rental plan. The whole table went silent. Rick's jaw clenched. My mom's eyes filled. Because the truth was out finally. Not because I yelled. Because Kelsey said it. And she said it in front of witnesses. My aunt whispered, "You were renting it." Kelsey tried to recover. So what? So what? My dad said quietly. He sounded disgusted. You tried to take it. My dad wasn't my biological dad. But my mom's brother was there, and he had always been neutral. Now he wasn't. Rick tried to pivot. We invested. We improved it. Brooke spoke for the first time, calm voice. You installed a lock to keep Evan out, then tried to make him sign away his share. That isn't improvement, that's control. Rick glared at her. Then he looked at me and said, "You think you won?" I replied calmly, "I didn't win. I protected myself." My mom started crying. Not because she was sorry yet. Because her family illusion was breaking. Kelsey stormed out. Dylan followed. Rick stayed, staring at my mom like she had failed him. Then Rick stood up, grabbed his coat, and left too. And the room exhaled. My mom whispered, "I didn't want this." I looked at her and said, "Calm, but you allowed it." That night, for the first time, relatives started texting me support. Not because they suddenly became brave. Because the lie had become too hard to hold. When truth becomes easy to prove, people stop defending the story. The next day, my mom came to my apartment alone. She looked tired. She said, "Rick left." I nodded. "Okay." She said, "Kelsey is furious." I nodded again. Then my mom said quietly, "I think I've been afraid of losing them so long I didn't notice I was losing you." I didn't answer quickly, because part of me wanted to believe her. And part of me remembered every time she chose peace over me. I said, "If you want a relationship, it will be slow, honest, and without Kelsey controlling it." My mom nodded. "Okay." Then she added, "Will you let me come to the cabin again?" I stared at her. Because that question mattered. Not because of the cabin. Because of access. I said, "Eventually, if you respect boundaries." My mom cried quietly. Okay. That was the first agreement in years that wasn't forced by Kelsey's mood. But the story wasn't finished. Because Kelsey had one more move. 2 days later, Miss Bennett called me and said, "Kelsey filed a civil claim for reimbursement and damages for lost rentals." Lost rentals. Again. I laughed once. Not amused. Confirmed. Because the truth was out, and now she was trying to punish me for exposing it. Kelsey's civil claim was short-lived. Not because she suddenly became reasonable. Because once something is on record, lawyers don't like weak cases. Miss Bennett responded with the court order, the notary mismatch, and witness statements from Thanksgiving. Kelsey's attorney offered to drop the claim if I agreed not to discuss the matter publicly. Not an apology. A gag request. Miss Bennett asked me what I wanted. I said, I want the cabin restored legally, and I want them to stop contacting me. So we agreed to a settlement term. Kelsey would drop all claims and stop contacting me directly. All communication through counsel. No rental listings. No lock changes. No access restrictions. And if she violated it, there would be consequences. Not revenge consequences. Documented consequences. The cabin's ownership was restored to the original structure my parents had set years ago before Kelsey tried to rewrite it. I didn't throw a party at the cabin. I didn't post photos. I went up one morning with Brooke and my kids. Noah and Ella ran to the dock like nothing had happened. Because kids don't care about property battles. They care about whether the place feels safe. Brooke sat on the porch and said, "Do you feel better?" I thought about it. "I feel clearer," I said. Because it wasn't the cabin that hurt the most. It was the betrayal. My mom started therapy after Rick left. Not because I demanded it. Because she finally saw what fear had done to her choices. Kelsey didn't apologize. Not really. She sent one message months later. "I'm sorry it got messy." I didn't reply. Because sorry it got messy is not sorry I tried to take what wasn't mine. Dylan stayed distant. He acted like he was above it, like he was a bystander. But he never denied bringing Jared. He never cleared his own role. And that told me everything. Now the title says, "My family betrayed me for my sister," Now the truth is out. Here's what truth is out actually looked like. It wasn't a viral post. It was people no longer able to pretend. It was my aunt telling Kelsey, "I heard what you said." It was my mom's brother refusing to host Kelsey at Christmas. It was neighbors asking why the cabin listing disappeared. Truth spreads quietly when it has documents behind it. The best payoff wasn't watching Kelsey lose. It was watching my kids learn something I never learned at their age. That you can love family and still enforce boundaries. One afternoon, Noah asked me, "Are we going to the cabin again?" I said, "Yes." He asked, "Is Aunt Kelsey going to be mean?" I paused, then said honestly, "Aunt Kelsey has her own problems, but we have rules now, and you're safe." Noah nodded like that was enough. And it was. My mom and I rebuilt slowly. Not with big speeches. With consistent behavior. She stopped relaying Kelsey's messages. She stopped asking me to be the bigger person for free. She started saying things like, "You didn't deserve that." Those words came late, but they mattered. I also made one change in my own life. I stopped being the family maintenance guy. No more fixing everything. No more proving I'm useful to earn a seat. I show up as a person, not a service. Because being useful is not the same as being loved. The last time I saw Rick was at a grocery store. He saw me, looked away, and walked down a different aisle. No apology. No closure. And surprisingly, I didn't need it. Because the closure was the record. The closure was the judge's order. The closure was the notary mismatch. The closure was Kelsey saying rental plan in front of people. The truth didn't need Rick's permission. It existed without him. So yes, my family betrayed me for my sister. And for a while, I looked like the difficult one. Until the truth came out. And it stayed out. Not because I screamed. Because I documented. And then I enforced boundaries long enough that the story couldn't be rewritten again. That is the quiet payoff. Not revenge. Protection. One last thing. If your family tells you don't make it a big deal, but your name is on paperwork you didn't agree to, treat it like what it is. A boundary breach. If you like calm documentary-style stories with receipts and a real payoff, subscribe. I post long-form stories like this regularly, and the next story starts with "just sign here" and ends with a timestamp that doesn't lie.